It's Nashville Market Time 2020. Here we are, Franklin, Tennessee, and welcome to Cross Stitch Antiques, my designing business. Here we are. I'd like to show you all some of my new releases. This year I'm introducing a sequel, so to speak, to Innocence 1840, pardon the glare, which came out last year. Has been very popular, an absolutely beautiful antique sampler reproduction. The antique by reproduction. What's new this year is my chart called Pieces of Innocence 1840, which actually takes pieces of the Innocence sampler and makes 4 smaller charts for you to choose from. As you can see, you have the option of the motif, the verse, little pieces of the sampler, which you can personalize with your own name, your own hometown. And the charts I do are very large and the symbols easy to see. So that's the first release, Pieces of Innocence 1840. My second new release is Antique Pattern Album circa 1880. This was an exclusive teaching chart for last year's market and now is available for purchase for everyone. So what I have here is an actual old pattern booklet made out of paper, which was once altogether stapled and is so old, circa 1880, that it's completely fallen apart. But what I've done is charted 26 of these small patterns into the booklet that you would receive. This is perfect for embellishing or making smalls or designing your own sampler, such as I've done here with my little model. There's so many borders and motifs. There's an endless, infinite amount of stitching choices available to you. The chart itself has multiple patterns in very large print. So that's Antique Pattern Album, circa 1880. My third new release is a historic reproduction sampler called Catherine Morgan. This is a companion piece to the Carter House sampler, which came out last year. Both of these samplers are owned by the Battle of Franklin Trust, which is located here in Franklin, Tennessee. It's the Civil War site of the worst battle of the Civil War, with 10,000 casualties in one day, fought on the front lawn of the Carter House. Who was the woman who owned the house, stitched the sampler, Mary Atkinson, in 1817. Her home became the battlefield, and one of her sons died trying to reach the front doorway after he was wounded on that very battlefield of their front lawn. This sampler she stitched at age 11 in 1817, but hung on their bedroom wall for many years, and now it's replicated for you. I'm honored to say that all the proceeds of the sampler, chart, purchase, and kit go back to the Battle of Franklin Trust to preserve these Civil War sites for all posterity. Her companion, which is my third release, as I said, is Catherine Morgan. This sampler is also from Franklin, Tennessee. It was donated to the Battle of Franklin Trust by the descendants of Catherine Morgan, and occasionally hangs in the Carnton Plantation, which is another Civil War site. The Carnton Plantation became the hospital for both Confederates and Union soldiers during the aftermath of the Battle of Franklin. This sampler occasionally adorns the walls of the plantation for decorative purposes authentic to the period and locale, although Catherine Morgan herself was not a member of the family. one of the ancestors of her donated this to the Battle of Franklin Trust for that purpose. I'm also honored to say that in the upcoming year, I've also been honored to be willing and delighted to stitch 2 more Civil War era samplers from the Tennessee, Williamson County. The first one will be this beautiful sampler, and the second one will be similar to this, both of which are owned by Mr. Rick Warren, director of the Heritage Foundation in Franklin, Tennessee. The proceeds of these 2 new samplers, which I will be stitching in the upcoming year, will again benefit the Heritage Foundation of Franklin, Tennessee. So Catherine Morgan, as I mentioned, is my 3rd release. Moving on to the 4th release, we have something entirely different, a fun, whimsical antique sampler, which I've called Signs of Spring Motif Sampler, dating to circa 1845. You'll see close up on the antique, you'll see a squirrel, a May basket, various flowers, quilt patterns, a heart, and lovely border motifs. Again, see how bright and cheerful these colors are, preserved after all these years. The model I stitched, you'll see here, is very similar in color and size, and this is available to stitch in DMC or Auvergne silks, and I have it stitched here on 28 count vintage meadow rue to approximate the size of the original sampler. My 5th release is on this fair canvas. This is one of my own original designs, and as you can see, it's a very personalized family tribute sampler. Up here at the top, I have stitched in significant initials of myself, my 14 children, yes, 14 initials, their grandparents' initials, and the year my husband and I were married and established our family. And under the crowns are the initials of my 7 grandchildren so far. This is a personalized sampler. You can add as many crowns as you like, more space if needed. It's plenty to go around. It's a very large, beautiful sampler done in Gloriana silks. I stitched it on 32 count vintage buttercream, and I hope you're as delighted with it as I am. My next release is the lovely Anne Wilkinson 1834. This is the antique that you're actually looking at here. You can see how it was nailed to the original frame, which I was able to frame onto a new piece of fabric to salvage every little inch, even though it was pretty tattered around the edges. This glorious sampler I have replicated on 36 count vintage sand dune in Auvergne silks. This was just a joy to stitch. There's no boredom here. Each flower is so vibrant in color, each bird so charming, and the colors keep changing, so you never get tired of it. The beautiful verse is in over one, a wonderful message. And we have the bottom part, which border will eventually be soon finished. I hope you love Anne Wilkinson as much as I do. And then just a little bit of information about my past releases. I've been a stitcher all my life, and here we have many of my prior releases As a mother of 14, I spent a lot of time at home raising my children and also pursuing a creative outlet, which I could do at home. So I have multiple samplers regarding home and family life. This is a birth sampler, a wedding sampler, another wedding sampler, a family sampler listing the birthdays and years of all my children, of female arts, my own design, all of these are, a family tree sampler, and this sampler called How Blessed the Maid, the verse of which I found on an antique sampler, which perfectly describes how I feel. How blessed the maid, when circling years improve, her God the object of her warmest love, whose active years successful as they glide, the book, the needle, and the pen divide. This original design of mine was chosen by the Embroiderers Guild of America's Through the Needle's Eye exhibit, a traveling exhibit from 2014 to 2017 that visited art museums and galleries across the United States. I was very honored to enter and have this chosen. So those are a few of my prior releases dating back from 1998 to about 2010. Last but not least, a few of my more recent, in the past 2 years, releases, if you'd like to see them again. Antique sampler fragment. Again, I'm a flower lover, I'll admit it. Here's the beautiful model of this gorgeous fragment of an antique sampler. You might wonder how I acquired these. A few years ago, one of my daughters said, "Mom, you should sell your samplers on eBay." I'm like, "I'm not selling my samplers." "But Mom, there's all kinds of samplers up there." So I did look at eBay just out of curiosity to see what they might have, just to browse, so to speak. The first sampler I saw was this magnificent sampler. I had to buy it. Band of Roses, 1845. And lo and behold, this sampler was from an auction a half-hour's ride from my home in South suburban Chicago. So I was actually able to go and pick it up. This is still available, my first antique sampler release. I'm proud to say this has been a very popular sampler. It was released in 2017. It hangs on my bedroom wall. I wake up every morning and it's the first thing I see. I'm honored to replicate the beauty from the hands of women who made these gorgeous samplers years and years ago without the lighting and the materials we now have. We need to treasure these. And now you can have these beautiful samplers to stitch in your own home. Another similar story with the antique sampler fragment. This too I located within the south suburbs. Where it was originally made, I don't know, but it's a beauty. A couple more of my own designs. She Seeks Wool and Flax and Works with Willing Hands is a takeoff from the layout of the beautiful antique sampler fragment. I added in the lovely verse from Proverbs 31 regarding the worthy woman, and another takeoff of that same type of layout. We have Happy the woman. Happy the woman who can find constant employment in her mind. She for amusement need not roam, her pleasure centers in the home. Again, a verse from an antique sampler that speaks to my heart. Another prior release is Whenever I Take My Walks Abroad, a beautiful old sampler with the words of Isaac Watts from an ancient hymn. 3 red pots, another antique reproduction sampler from 1841. Suffer Little Children, another antique reproduction. And there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this visit to Cross Stitch Antiques. Look forward to meeting and stitching all of you stitchers and sampler lovers as we join together with our needle.